Alright, this video goes with Chapter 2 of Ecce Romani. We're looking at translating English sentences into Latin sentences, which is going the opposite way of what we've done so far. So it's a little bit different. It requires us to be a little bit more careful. So I'm going to go over some pointers, and then we'll look at an example. The first pointer is that when we're translating something from Latin into English, we need to pay attention to all of the nouns. We need to pay attention to all of the adjectives. There's my dyslexia. And we need to pay attention to all of the verbs. Okay? So, unlike in English where when we have nouns, we just pluralize them by adding an S. In Latin, if something is singular or plural, it affects every word in the sentence. It affects the nouns, the adjectives, and the verbs. So we need to constantly be asking ourselves, is this singular, which I'll mark as an S, or is it plural, which I'll mark with a P? So that's going to be the question every step of our way. So that's one of the big pointers that we're going to focus on when we get to the example, is to look at, is it singular or is it plural? Next thing that I want you to also focus on is that there are a lot of phrases that might be translated differently than we think in Latin. So when you see phrases, especially prepositional phrases, those are ones with words like in or to, or when we see adverbs like I think slowly is one that we have. Just take a look in your book and see how they're translated in your book. For example, a phrase like "in the fields" is a little bit difficult for us to do at our level. So instead of writing the word "in," which is Latin for "in," and then writing the word for "field," look at what your book says. So the vocabulary lists under the stories in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 should be good resources as you translate sentences from Latin to English. Alright, so to look at an example here, let's consider the sentence Cornelia and Flavia are walking slowly to the house. Alright. So my first order of business here is to consider, is this sentence talking about one person, or is it talking about more than one? And you can come to the conclusion pretty quickly by saying, oh, there's Cornelia and there's Flavia. It's more than one person. So I know that Cornelia and Flavia, their accompanying verb are walking, and any adjectives that describe them are going to be plural. So we'll keep that in mind as we go forward. The second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look for any of those tiny little phrases that might trip me up. One of them is going to be to the house or to the country house. We'll use the word "via" there. And another one is going to be slowly. All right. So I'm paying attention to slowly and to the country house. So come up with, for translating Cornelia and Flavia, take a second and pause the video, see what you come up with. Alright, welcome back. I hope you came up with Cornelia et Flavia. So you'll realize that we don't actually need to change their endings at all. They're two single people, but together, when they walk, we need to think about that verb. Pause it for a second to see if you can come up with the verb for to walk. So the beginning of the verb is going to be ambula. And then we need to figure out, are we going to put a T or are we going to put an unt onto the end? Is it going to be ambulat or ambulant? And since we're talking about two people, we're going to say ambulant because it's plural. So Cornelia et Flavia ambulant. To translate that would be Cornelia and Flavia are walking. It'd sound weird if it was just ambulat with just a T on the end. It'd translate as Cornelia and Flavia is walking, which would sound a little odd. So that's we don't need to change verbs all that often when we pluralize things in English. So it's important to pay attention when we try to do it in Latin. Then for the short little phrases, you can just look up the word slowly, which is going to be lente. And then for to the house, see what you come up with for that. I'll give you 1 second if you pause the video. So for to the house, you had the word odd, and then wheel. Now, you might have wanted to say wheela, since that's the word that we know that means house. But when you use this preposition, it's going to change. We'll discuss this a few chapters from now. And it's going to have an M on the end. So it's ad wheelom. So that's why when you have these little phrases, to the house, in the fields, those sort of things, you should really just look them up and see what they are under the stories in the first couple chapters of your book. All right, let's try one more sentence. Let's try the girls are tired. All right, so let me just let you try to do that whole thing on your own if you pause the video and see what you come up with. So you have a couple of choices here, and you have a couple of things to consider. First off, who's the subject? Who are we talking about in this sentence? It's the girls, right? So are the girls, is that just one girl, or is that multiple girls? You can pretty reflexively say it's multiple girls. This is plural. Okay? By nature of that being plural, everything else in our sentence, this adjective that's referring to the girls, this verb that's referring to the girls, those are all plural as well. So everything that we write in the sentence is going to need to have a plural ending on it. So let's take a look and see what we come up with. The word for girl, puel, and then is singular, but you want I for plural, so it's puelai. The same, you'll notice, defesa is our singular. You want it to be plural, it's going to be defesai. So look at that, they even match in their ending. The tricky one is going to be the verb, which is going to be sunt. Note that NT ending on there, telling you that it's plural. So if that's what you got with, if that's what you got when you translated it, great, good for you. If not, I suggest that you go back and you review your notes from the earlier Chapter 2 video on plurals, and maybe rewatch that video if it's not clear to you. Or, of course, give me a shout out in class and let me help you out with that. Thank you for watching, and have a good afternoon.